creating a block and the copy and delete functions. In this session, we will explore the 3 ways to create the most commonly used part in Python, the block. We will also learn how to use the Python functions copy and delete. Please start with a new Python open. The first method we will use to create a block is called the click, drag and pull method. First, go to the vertical menu on the right-hand side of the screen and select Parts. Now from the submenu default, select Block. The mouse pointer should now become active, indicated by the appearance of the 3 axes. The input prompt and input field will also appear at the top left of your screen. The input prompt is asking, base point. This is asking you where in the model space you would like to place your block. Go to the origin point and hold down the left mouse button. Then move along the y-axis and then along the x-axis so a face appears. Once you have the shape of a block, release the left mouse button and drag the mouse pointer upwards to create the height of the block, and release once you have your desired height. This is what is referred to in Python as the click, drag and pull method. Let's now repeat this process. We will first delete the block. Right-click in the graphics area to call the context menu. This menu gives you access to the most commonly used Python functions without having to access the menus. Select Delete, and Python will delete the block, as it's the only part in the model space. Now from the vertical parts menu on the right-hand side of the screen, from the submenu default, select Block. The mouse pointer should now become active, and the input prompt and input field will appear at the top left-hand side of your screen. Go to the origin point and hold the left mouse button down. Then move along the y-axis and then along the x-axis so a face appears. Once you have the shape of the block, release the left mouse button and drag the mouse pointer upwards to create the height of the block, and release once you have your desired height. We will now create a block using known values by entering them into the input field. Go to the Parts vertical menu on the right-hand side of the screen and select Block. When the input prompt is asking base point, select somewhere in the model space with the left mouse button so an orange star appears. The input prompt will now be asking lengths LX, LY and LZ. In the input field, type 700, comma, which indicates the length in the x-axis, then 400, comma, which indicates the depth in the y-axis, and 18, which indicates the height in the z-axis. Now press Enter on the keyboard and Python will create a block with these values. We will now copy this panel to create another identical panel using the click and drag method. Right-click in the graphics area and select Copy. The gizmo should now appear, as well as the input prompt and field. We will now use the gizmo to copy this block. Hold the left mouse button down on the red arrowhead and move the mouse to the right, and Python will create a second block and move it along the x-axis. You can also do this vertically. Right-click in the graphics area and select Copy. Select the original block with the left mouse button, then middle mouse button to accept. The gizmo should now appear, as well as the input prompt and field. This time hold the left mouse button down on the blue arrowhead and lead the mouse upwards, and Python will create a second block and move it along the Z axis. Now right-click in the graphics area and select Delete. Select the two panels we copied with the left mouse button. And once they are highlighted, press the middle mouse button to accept, and Python will delete them from the model space. We will now look at using the copy function by inputting a known value using the click and enter method. Right-click in the graphics area and select Copy. The input prompt will now appear asking what distance would you like to place the new part in the X, Y and Z axes. If I want to place the new book 800 millimeters away from the original book in the X axis, in the input field I type 800. Press Enter, and Python will then ask how many copies of the new part I require. If I leave the value at 1 and press Enter on the keyboard, Python will create a new part 800 millimeters away from the original. We will now repeat the process, but this time in the Z axis. Right-click in the graphics area and select Copy. Select the original book with the left mouse button, then middle mouse button to accept. The input prompt will now appear, asking what distance you would like to place the new part in the X, Y and Z axes. This time I want to place the new book 800 millimeters away from the original book in the Z axis. This time in the input field I type comma, comma, which indicates a 0 value for X and Y, and then type 800 for the Z axis. Now press Enter. Python will then ask how many copies of the new part I require. This time enter the value of 2 and press Enter on the keyboard. Python will create 2 new parts 800 millimeters away from the original in the Z axis. We will now delete some of these panels. Right-click in the graphics area and select Delete. Select the block on the right and the last block in the Z axis. And once they are highlighted, press the middle mouse button to accept. We will now create a block using the point-to-point method. Go to the Parts vertical menu on the right-hand side of the screen and select Block. Once the gizmo and input prompt and field appear, select the top left bottom corner point of the top panel with the left mouse button. An orange star will now appear. Now select the front left top point of the bottom panel, and Python will create a face between the 2 points, and the block dialog will appear, asking for the value in X, or in this instance, the thickness required. Type 18 in the field adjacent to X, then press OK. We will now look at the third method to copy a part, called Copy Point-to-Point. Right-click in the graphics area and select Copy. Select the vertical book with the left mouse button, then middle mouse button to accept. When the gizmo and input prompt and field appear, select the top left front corner point of the vertical panel with the left mouse button. A red arrow should now appear. Drag the arrow to the bottom right corner point of the top panel as shown, and select with the left mouse button. The direction displacement dialog will now appear, and Python will automatically calculate the distance between the 2 points for you. Now click Only X, and Python will create another block placed to the points selected, creating a carcass for you. Please save this file to your Python user training folder.